Let's take a trip down nostalgia lane again with another game on the PlayStation that brought something fresh to the Monsters as Pets phenomenon back in the 90s. With already trending brands such as Pokemon and Tamagotchi, Digimon felt like one of those franchises as a kid I couldn't wrap my head around because I was too caught up in learning the Pokemon system on the original Game Boy. However, when I got this game and played it, I was immediately captured by the charm of being more personal with your soul companion whom you raised and cared for to evolve into stronger forms. But for me, I've had a love-hate relationship with this game. Say for instance, you've washed and groomed your dog for the last hour. Then, as you boil your wok ready to start cooking it, it's already jumped in a mud pile and also taken a dump on the concrete. But you think, I had fun the last hour doing that, I think I'll do that again. Ladies and gentlemen, with that image in mind and also my promise to deliver solid content on my last video, here is my review play of the timeless classic, Digimon World. Digimon World puts you in the shoes of your own avatar, who is summoned to the digital world and lands in the cute little city of File Island. There is trouble happening in the world, and Digimon are losing their memories and in turn are becoming ferals, causing the city to suffer as a result. Your objective is simple. Save the island by helping Digimon get their memories back and bring them back to the main city. Then, eliminate the cause of the threat and bring peace back to the digital world. To help you along with your quest, the wise Digimon of File City asks you questions to determine your compatibility with a Digimon partner, Agumon or Gabumon. Easy enough, right?
You're wrong.
Once you're sent on your way alongside your new partner, the island's fate is in your hands. You'll explore new areas and engage in training your Digimon in order to be strong enough to fight the ferals outside of the city. So, how do you do that? Now we look at the gameplay, and this is probably the most challenging part of the whole game, as it really doesn't give you an extensive tutorial on how to do anything. In fact, once you've started, you pretty much trial and error the whole thing, unless you're like me and look up the charts to digivolve your companion on the path you want it to go. As far as plot guidance goes, the only assistance or clues you'll get is from the purple coconut or the jumping hornball. Else really, you're left on your own because of your character's knowledge on caring for Digimon, and somehow that's transferred to a first-time player like you at the age of 7. So, let's break this into bite-sized pieces for us to analyse. The Tamagotchi side of this game was a bunch of fun, because it almost gives you a more intimate sense of ownership with your companion. It would tell you when it's hungry, or sick, or just needs to visit a restroom. And so, like a responsible owner, you'd meet its every need to make sure you didn't neglect its care. The way you care for the Digimon, good or bad, affected the way it would then grow. For example, various conditions like the amount of battles fought or the amount of care mistakes you made would lead towards a different pathway to evolve into. Sure, you're able to keep an eye on the stats of your companion, but it doesn't distinctly tell you if you have met the criteria towards evolving into the Digimon you wanted. Hence why a guide was handy for me in being able to better guess what was coming. Initially, there is a training area where you can focus on particular skills, again, zoning in on a specific discipline to meeting an evolution condition. Once you've got the knack for training and fighting, then you'd consider your evolution options. For example, to evolve my Agumon into a Tyrannomon, it would need 1000 HP and 100 defense, but also have a body weight of 30 grams, 4 to 5 care mistakes, and had fought in 5 battles or less. As you can tell, these are a lot more conditions to evolving than Pokemon. This almost felt like you had more control over the evolutions than the level-based conditions that Pokemon had. While I'm aware that I'm making comparisons between two similar but incredibly different franchises, it goes without saying that Digimon did well to become its own standalone concept in amongst Pokemon, which was already around for a year prior to their release. And I remember having that bias as a child that Digimon was a rip-off of Pokemon. Then again, what isn't a rip-off of each other nowadays? With this game, it was a complete contrast to the collect and train aspect of monster dungeon crawlers, and adding the element of meeting the needs of your Digimon with food and administering medicine when it was sick was a nice touch to the game. This kinda did change with future games like Digimon World 3 and Digimon World DS, which removed those elements of the care system and focused more so on the training and exploring aspects of the game. One of the things that I remember being genuinely upset about as a kid was when your companion would redigitize into its in-training form, either through age or sickness. In a way, this does set you back in your journey because of the need to retrain your Digimon from scratch, but it also allowed you to choose a different path for your Digimon to evolve into, and aimed to satisfy the need for those of us completionists who try to obtain each evolution for the personal index you carry. Yes. Oh, okay, come on. Hopefully some time on. Come on. Oh, damn it! What a waste of time that was. Next, I'll talk about combat, which had its obvious pros and cons in the way that these battles were handled, but provided a different style of gameplay to already existing mechanics for the time. Combat blended a sort of real-time and turn-based system where your Digimon would be running around and attacking with whatever command you had issued it, but there seemed to be an internal clock based on, I would presume, agility of your Digimon versus your opponent, and also the cooldown of each technique that was used, which would determine when an attack would be launched. There was a special finishing technique which you could activate during the battles, which would be their ultimate move they would unleash, but that would accumulate over time as the battle progressed. As far as the commands go, even though it gave you a variety of tactics, it wasn't as intuitive as I would have liked them to have been. When you increased your Digimon's brain power, you gained access to new commands to use in battle, but in the early game and with minimal techniques, these tactics were pointless until your Digimon learnt stronger moves you could alternate between. The more defensive commands weren't as effective, and sometimes the spaces you would be fighting in wouldn't allow you to engage from great distances, which rendered some of these tactics useless. Perhaps the only time I found it effective was being able to select the techniques to use when your Digimon reached 500 brain power, and then sort of engage in a hit and run tactic if it could be pulled off. Most of the time in the early game, I would set and forget on the most aggressive command and then have my inventory up for quick healing for those stickier battles against bosses. I say set and forget, but really it's just me desperately hitting the commands in hopes that it will do something more. Attack, 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 please. When you engage in combat, one of the most annoying things was for the battle to actually commence. Even though I needed to fight, sometimes it would get to the stage where a random encounter would become so frustrating because it would take roughly 6 to 8 seconds for it to actually start. After many consecutive battles over a period of time, I actually dreaded having to fight a Digimon. Some battles could drag on for a while if the AI decided that it was time to zone out all the Digimon and make them look like they're having a stroke. And no matter how many commands you give it, they just stay there until the AI decides to continue fighting. This would turn a simple engagement into a 5 or 10 minute battle, which at one point I would purposely try to avoid these battles just to progress to the next part of the plot unabated. The controls deserve a mention on this game because of how poorly optimized it was. The perspective you played was sometimes these weird combinations of static and floating cam on different areas of maps. Because you have no way of controlling the point of view, it felt very restrictive and at times didn't allow you to see what was ahead. There were times where you would enter the next zone of an area, but the way it was positioned at times, it could cause you to unintentionally re-enter that zone you came in from. This also got annoying because of the wait time in between maps, which, yes, resets the spawners for the zones if you clear it, but on the old PS1, it was tiresome and somewhat disjointing from your gaming experience. The hitboxes on the terrain is another gripe I had with this game, because I found that these bounds weren't as optimized as they should have been. This ties in with the graphics, which I'll talk about a little later, but because of the 2D artwork of the terrain trying to combine with a 3D plane, it sort of worked and didn't work in some areas. Because the perspectives on the camera changes so often, perhaps this affected the geometry of the bounds and in turn made it more clunkier to navigate around. In other words, draw a circle on some paper and then draw an outline with your feet and you get something similar. And before you ask, yes, I committed to the bit. Graphics wise, I felt it was a nice touch to have some of that 3D integration into the world with the characters and whatnot. And the art for the scenery and the backgrounds were really nice, which I guess was pretty cutting edge for back then. I enjoyed the retro Japanese aesthetic, blended with a sort of miniaturized scraplands for the buildings of the city, the electronic debris as the finer detail around the world, and then the iconic landmarks for the other biomes scattered across the island. In fact, each area felt unique in its own habitat, and I think it's clever being able to make that distinction between each zone, despite in reality, those zones would be in such close proximity with each other, but I guess the rules are different in the digital world. The audio I find wasn't overly fantastic quality-wise, and that could probably be blamed on having to encode the audio down in the final product, which is a shame because if there was more of a focus on making the audio cleaner in the game, then I think Digimon World wouldn't be showing its age as much. It's very noticeable with the Foley elements like the birds, footsteps, and even the dialogue. And you can hear a noticeable reduction in quality, which seems it's bit crushed and slightly distorting in the process. The soundtrack has a very special place in my nostalgic heart, especially the curling theme against Penguinmon, which I've been playing throughout this review. So being able to make fair criticism on the tracks itself would have bias, except for the fact that in-game, the encoding of the audio made it slightly harsher on the mid-high frequencies than it probably should have. Maybe because of those memory limitations for games back then, perhaps it was a choice to sacrifice graphics or audio, and I suppose audio had to be scaled down to allow for smoother graphics. Overall, if I'm thinking back to the old PS1 days and I go through my list of treasured games, this title is definitely among the top 10. Yes, this game is slightly difficult to get your head around, it's not really well optimized, and there are some elements which leave a lot to be desired. But it is one of those games that I'll revisit now and again for some nostalgia, and say to myself that this will be the day I actually complete this game and try and complete the collection, so to speak. Like my other review plays, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this game. I love seeing comments pop up and I love responding where I can, so let's have some great discussions and reminisce in these memories together. As always, like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more content soon. Also check out my music project and give that some love too, thank you! Thanks for watching everyone, this is Chris Bow signing out.